Good evening, everyone. My name is Doug Chipman. I'm Mayor of the City of Clarence, and it's my pleasure to welcome you tonight for two special meetings. But before getting underway, could I ask all those present to please stand for council prayer. Almighty God, we humbly beseech Thee to vouchsafe Thy blessing upon this council. Direct and prosperous deliberations to the advancement of Thy glory and the true welfare of the people of the City of Clarence. Amen. I'd like to acknowledge the Tasmanian Aboriginal community as the traditional custodians of the land on which we're meeting tonight, and also pay our respects to elders past and present. Thank you. As I mentioned, we have two special council meetings tonight. The first one to consider the estimates, capital expenditure program, fees and charges for the coming financial year, and secondly to consider a planning application for an additional building on the Tasmanian campus at Lorraine. Both meetings will be broadcast to you live on YouTube with the link and the agenda papers available on the Council's website. I do need to remind all present here that what is said in this meeting is not protected by privilege. So I'd now like to open the first special meeting, which deals with the budget for the coming year, the estimates. Note apologies, we have Alderman Ewington is on leave, Alderman Kennedy and Mulder. Apologies. So if I could invite a motion please to adopt the estimates. Alderman Bromley.
Mr Mayor, I move the office recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder please? Thanks, Alderman Pearce. Alderman Bromley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I'm delighted to move the officer's recommendation regarding the estimates, capital expenditure program and the updated list of fees and charges for the financial year 2021-2022, in effect the FY22 budget for Clarence City Council. Mr Mayor, at this point it is, I feel, appropriate to acknowledge the outstanding work of our CFO, Mrs Miriam Coleman, and her superb team, as well as the General Manager and his whole executive team, who have spent many hours, some with us elected members in workshops and many without us, to arrive at this stage of the process this evening. To mangle an old adage, if you like public policy and sausages, you should never watch either one being made. Whilst the budget process over the past few months has not been without its inherent challenges and usual horse trading, I feel we've landed in the right place in regards to an, on average, 3.77% increase on the general rate. There is absolutely no question that if it were at all possible, we'd all like to see no increase in the rates. However, that's just not feasible. We know that last year, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Council did not increase rates. We also know that our city is experiencing such strong growth that hasn't been experienced since the 1950s, and that is driving demand across all our services. As recently reported, in the year to March, development applications in Clarence outstripped all other local government areas in the Greater Hobart region. We've experienced a surge in planning, building and plumbing applications, all unexpected. To meet the statutory deadlines and customer expectations, additional staff were recruited during the year to provide the services driven by this increased demand, with these costs being offset by the unbudgeted additional fee revenue. The budget before us this evening forecasts that the high demand on council services will continue at current levels into future years, and prudently, this has been factored into the FY22 estimates as an increase in fees and charges income alongside an increase in employee costs to respond to ongoing demand for services. As we know, given the surge in demand and the resultant pressure on council infrastructure such as roads, parks, playgrounds, tracks and trails, as well as ensuring we maintain our high service levels, coupled with the ambitious $21.4 million investment in capital works, the 3.77% increase is justified and will ensure delivery of core and essential services across our community. So, Mr Mayor, with those few words, I move the recommendation and seek the support of colleagues.
Thank you, Alderman Bromley. Alderman Pearce.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Alderman Bromley, for those magnificent words. And I also would like to thank the staff. But if you think I'm just getting up here and really happy with 3.77, no, I'm not. And I really think that somewhere along the line, we've got to have a look at some of the things that this council does. It's one of the biggest increases I think we've had for a while, but again, as Alderman Bromley said, it was zero last year, so I suppose, and the way the city's going, we've got to expect that. At no stage did I think that, I wouldn't be supporting this budget, but I do think we do have to look at some of our expenditure items. And some of the things we're getting into, which is, in my opinion, taking ratepayers' money, which we should never be in. And these are the things that I think, not the time, but over the year, we've really got to take a good, hard look at and make sure that we are getting value for money. Other than that, Mayor, I think Alderman Bromley summed it up beautifully that, we are going forward. It's a growing city and it's a magnificent city, and really all the things we plan to do is fantastic. I just have that one warning, that's all.
Thank you. Other speakers? Alderman James.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and may I say from the outset, this rate increase is outside the realm of what I thought that we had sort of established in last year's pre-budget process, in which it was floated at the time that there may be an increase between 3 and 3.5%. This has exceeded that amount, and one of the reasons why I thought we were looking within that, between 3 and 3.5, was in fact because we had that revenue inflow from a lot of the development applications, building works, etc. And this council exceeded expectations in relation to revenue inflow in relation to that period. Also, within these notes from the officers, it refers to on 2.8, on page 7, 2.8, the proposed increase in the March Consumer Price Index for Hobart is 1.1%, and also the annual movement in the most recent LGAT Council Cost Index of 0.78. There we have the bottom line, I think, in which we need to probably consider, and notwithstanding that amount or that flow on effect, the 3.77 is, in my opinion, inappropriate to be able to meet the expectations of the ratepayers in the city of Clarence. It was only recently at one of the meetings, our last council meeting, a ratepayer actually in writing and also suggested in his comments was that he implored the council to keep rates down because people are suffering in the community, and in this particular time, and we're still in the sort of timeline of this COVID-19 pandemic, of course, that we need to be very considerate in relation to what rate increase we are passing on. May I say that I was a little bit disappointed that in the past, and this is my view, and I have said it on a number of occasions, we would normally receive the council's 10-year financial plan, and that basically would be done in conjunction with the rating, so that we could get a look at the long-term sort of movement in what the council's financial planning is out over the next number of years. I think the 3.77, Mr Mayor, is inappropriate. It's too much, and I will not be supporting the 3.77% increase.
Thank you, Alderman James. Other speakers? Alderman Walker.
Question first through to you. It's been customary practice with estimates passed to be voting on these matters ab seriatim. what is the case tonight? I assume that would also be the case at tonight's meeting.
Well, that's a matter for council. If there's a procedural motion for, we're obviously having one debate for all the estimates. The motion on the table is the officer's recommendation. It is possible for us, of course, to have 3 separate votes after the debate is closed, but that's only a procedural motion for that to occur.
I move a procedural motion for that to occur.
Do I have a seconder for, thank you, Alderman Edmonds. Being a procedural, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. So those 3 items, A, B and C, will be voted on at Serie. Thank you.
Look, there's 3 elements to this, and as far as the CapEx goes, I'm supportive of it. Is it the CapEx program I would have moulded in my own image? No. I actually think we're a little underdone. I think there's no shame in borrowing in this environment to bring forward the priority amenity projects of Vic Esplanade, Dog Park, Richmond, and indeed the Lauderdale Canal Precinct, so that they can be enjoyed by the community sooner. I think there's been an increased appetite for such recreation infrastructure, and the short-term borrowing costs of that, I think, outweigh the delay than what might otherwise happen. And yeah, that might involve some outsourcing project staff, but I think we're able to do it. In relation to fees and charges, I could divert to form and, you know, pick the I and the T out of certain line items. I won't. I think they're reasonable and they're defendable. Problems for me come around point A, the estimates, and I feel I'm starting to resemble Crazy 8 Simpson shouting at the clouds. I don't, and I note that we will be considering performance budgeting later in the year. I don't think we ever came close to giving the real rigour and fine-tooth combing over estimates that we could have. I see it time and time again that the elements, and I read an article only last month about all the different and great and wonderful spheres that the local government can wade into, and I can tell you state governments love that because they have nothing more than councils undertaking work that are the responsibility of other jurisdictions. And, you know, monitoring some of that discretionary spending over time and graphing it, I think you'll find that the growth rates within some of those areas are far and above the general operation expenditure. So I appreciate the diligence of the work that the staff has done, and we've been presented with the information, and I guess it was up to us. But these, you know, the punch bowl in the stimulus sense is still out with the national economy, but that punch bowl is going to be taken away and there's going to be a hangover. And if you're in a reforming frame, or if you're in a tough decision frame, this is really the last budget that you can do it. Maybe we have done enough. I'm not totally convinced we have.
Thank you. Other speakers? Alderman Evans?
Thank you very much. Echo a lot of the sentiment, particularly in the previous speaker, but others tonight. Very thankful for the hard work put in by executive support and staff throughout the organisation, and indeed around the table in this process. Was it hard enough? I don't feel like we worked as hard as we did last year, and again, we talk about the word barnacles. I think we could have scraped a few off. And indeed, pick up that sentiment that about dotting I's and crossing T's. I'll support all 3 points of this recommendation. However, it is important to place on the record that there's certain things that we go into bat for and we go into bat against. We don't get our way around the table, but overall, I'm in a position where I will still support it. Other than to flag that, there are certain elements I think that we could have removed, which would have taken a lot of pressure off that 3.77%, which is is above the number that personally was comfortable with. However, again, we're in a room of, well, 9 tonight, but 12 during this process, so I would be constructive around that. I am looking forward to working through the motion that Alderman Walker put, was that last Monday night? Or yeah, around the way that we approach the budget process. I think that without wanting it to be a Pandora's box, I think it is a way to sort of raise some other concerns or other ideas. Actually, might be a more positive way to put it, around how we can do this process the way that it feels like people want to do it. I think there's a lot of stuff that people can't quite, as all the people put their finger on how they'd like to reform it, but the sort of the need for some reform of how we go about it is certainly not going to be harmful in my experience. And just another note, just to flag something, this is 3.77% is an uncomfortable figure, but we've got another thing working in the background, which is the waste levy or living tax that's going to start being charged through our rates bill as well. So it is difficult to sort of swallow that these numbers will be going up at the point that they are, and just to say that it's easy to say you're uncomfortable, but then to not have suggested things that could have taken the pressure off. And I feel comfortable that I did go into bat for things that we could have taken out of this budget, or different priorities, and indeed some of the stuff Alderman Walker said about loans for game-changing infrastructure I would have been comfortable with too. At the end of all that, it's a big soup. I understand that. It's a soup cooked by 12 chefs plus a lot of people on a lot of sous chefs, a lot of people on cold prep for weeks and weeks in advance preparing the ingredients. So with that said, I hope that I've got my views about what makes me comfortable about this, but also what makes me uncomfortable, and a desire to continue to do it better. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Edmonds. First speakers. Right, a reply, Alderman Palmer.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I thank colleagues for their contributions this evening. Preparing for tonight, I was reminded words of that great man, late President Ronald Reagan, who said, "Simple fairness dictates that government must not raise taxes on families struggling to pay their bills." I was reminded of that saying because during a family dinner earlier this evening, I was asked what was being discussed.
New information, Mr. Alderman Palmer?
Was asked what was being discussed this evening, and I mentioned we're talking about the rates, and I mentioned the proposed rate increase of 3.77%. And the very clear response I got, which is always a litmus test, is be blowed, you can pay that extra. This is not going to be well received by some in our community. There are some that are still struggling, and there's some that will continue to struggle into the future. And it's not politically palatable to come in here and propose a rate increase. I knew that when I jumped to my feet earlier tonight to move this motion. It's not politically palatable. It is, however, the right and prudent thing to do on this occasion. As you read in the weekend press, there wasn't a rate increase last year, as we all know. So, in effect, because of the sound financial management principles employed by this council over a long period of time, it is in effect, if you like, over the last 2 years, 1.89% increase per annum. We were asked when this process first started what we envisaged the increase to be, within what sort of range, ranging from 2.5 to 5 plus. And I think that after an mammoth amount of work by particularly the CFO, the General Manager and the Executive team, and of course the CFO's team, we've arrived at this point this evening. Service levels, as we know, and demand our services are going through the roof. We tonight will be hopefully endorsing the second largest capital works program ever experienced by this council, over or worth $21.4 million. And as directors of this organisation, it is incumbent upon us not only to make what are the politically easy, the politically palatable decisions, but rather the right decisions. The decisions that will set this city up for future success. And Mr Mayor, with those few words, I commend the motion.
Thank you. So the first motion before the Chair is A, that the estimates for the financial year 2021 to 2022 attached as attachment 1 to the agenda be adopted. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. And B, that the capital expenditure program for the financial year 2021 to 2022 attached as attachment 2 to the agenda be adopted. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. And that the updated list of fees and charges attached as attachment 3 to the agenda be adopted. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. That concludes our business for this special council meeting, which I'll declare closed and declare open the special council meeting dealing with the development application at 4A Boundary Street, Lorraine, for an additional building to the existing Tasto campus. Before proceeding, I would note that the apologies are the same as they were for the preceding meeting, and I would ask if there are any declarations of interest of Alderman or Class Associate. Thank you. There being none, the recommendation before the Chair is approval subject to conditions and advice. Would I have a move and a second to please? Thank you, Alderman Warren. Second to Alderman Blomley. Alderman Warren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's rare that we get the opportunity to approve a development which ticks all the boxes. It's in a sensible location. It doesn't impact overly negatively on the neighbours or the environment. It provides a well-resourced training facility for an area where there is a need to develop those trade skills, particularly with the current surge in building applications. So this will allow us to train more plumbers and associated trades. So to me, this is all positives. There are some conditions added to that, providing it meets disability access requirements. I think that this is a really good development that we can all be proud of. So I'm happy to commend the motion.
Thank you, Alderman Blomley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I thank the member of the motion for her very succinct overview of this DA. Interestingly, no representations were received, and like the member of the motion, I think it's superb that this Trades and Water Centre of Excellence is being based here in the great city of Clarence. I note that one thing that stood out to me was regarding external lighting, and that is that that lighting would be for another 2 hours, opposed to the normal hours from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. This would be from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Clearly, from my reading, my limited knowledge of this sort of stuff, that would be for security reasons, and I think it's quite appropriate that lighting be available there, particularly for those studious individuals who, for whatever reason, might be on campus later than normal. Mr Mayor, this proposal satisfies the relevant requirements of the scheme. It's recommended for approval. I think it's absolutely superb, and I can't wait for it to be up and running. Happy to support it.
Thank you. Other speakers? Alderman James.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and anything I think that this council can support in the way of an educational facility on the Eastern Shore is tremendous, and I think this goes the next step, in particular in relation to the trades. That's really been highlighted by the additional buildings that are going to be constructed within this particular area. It's very close to me. I've lived in the area for many years, and I know that it was part of the Flagstaff Gully High School, and then of course over the time it became part of the Clarence campus, and it's been involved in many other different educational pursuits, and this of course is an extension of one of them in relation to the trades. It is interesting to note that our planning scheme obviously has some compliance with zone and also with codes, and the proposal meets the scheme's relevant acceptable solutions of a community purpose zone and access and parking and access and stormwater management codes, with the exception of the following. Now, obviously, when we have a number of exceptions, then we need to go and look at the performance criteria. But because of the very nature and location of this particular development, it has the hallmarks of being able to stand over and above the acceptable solutions, because in relation to performance criteria, it has basically covered those points in relation to external lighting, which has been identified as an exception to the acceptable solutions. And also too, in relation to the community purpose zone, it is actually, the building is a height, or has a height of 15.6 metres, which does not comply with the 10 metre height limit prescribed by the acceptable solutions. However, we go then to performance criteria, and we know that the location of this particular development is well and truly away from the actual residential properties in Flagstaff Gully, and also too, it's going to be condensed or maintained within the structure with these additional buildings further removed from the general residential area. So as we move through the performance criteria, we're able to identify a lot of these aspects and also look at what the officers have come up with in relation to that. So overall, this is a great project. It's an extension of what we call our key educational facility on the Eastern Shore. It's the Clarence campus, and it's key in its development, in my opinion, is the trades. And we need to be able to develop the trades in order to meet the ongoing demand that is currently obviously driven by the unfortunate circumstances of the pandemic, and also too of the nature of how people want to obviously build their own homes or have the qualified personnel to do that. Overall, I think this is a great development. It is adding to the jewels in the Clarence crown, and I think any time that we can say that, I think it's a great project, and I believe this council should support it unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor. I just say, I'm really pleased that TAFE decided to build on the area which they've got now. I'm really pleased, not like some others that, take things away from their area. I'm really pleased to see this. And Alderman James has explained, being a resident of Flagstaff Gully for some time, that how good the area will be with this, and it's the right area for this area to grow. I just think it's magnificent coming to the Eastern Shore and on this facility, so I congratulate TAFE.
Thank you. Other speakers?
Really briefly, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Time's moving on, and I can't be certain whether it was 30 years or 31 years ago that the field government closed the then Moraine High School. There's a lot of tough decisions that government made or had to make, and I think it's a testament to governments all through this time that the site was maintained as an educational facility, and I think with the logistics of the other nearby surrounding high schools that were able to take the intake, being Clarence and Rose Bay, that this is an optimum use of the site, and it's really pleasing to see. It's it doesn't go without noting just how close in proximity it is to a plethora of developments that are occurring right now. So in many ways it is the right place. We've gone through this and as the Alderman noted, not a whole lot of pushback as far as representations go. Zero is really not a whole lot, and it is a pleasing thing. So I think that where there were challenges, the ways to work it through were identified. So I seek council's support.
Right, a reply, Laura?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I thank my colleagues for their contributions, in particular the analysis of the issues. And I am reminded that it wasn't Flagstaff Valley High School, it was in fact Moraine High School. Yeah. And I did in fact attend my first term of grade 7 there while Gilston Bay High was being built. because Justin Bay High has come and gone in my lifetime, as part of my proud Education Department public schooling on the Eastern Shore. But this is a great location, a great repurposed facility. I had the honour to visit the building section a few years ago and give a presentation to student designers at that point, and so I can envisage how this adds to the overall capacity of that educational institution, and I do commend the motion to my colleagues.
Thank you. So the motion before the chair is approval, subject to conditions of price. All those in favour? The motion is carried unanimously, and that brings us to the conclusion of our second special